so nice to be here. Happy New Year. I am excited to do this, and I promised in my email I was going to be wearing my cozy. So I'm wearing this giant thing that is so warm and comfortable because, it's kind of a gray day, and if you're like me, you're trying to figure out what day is it, what day of the week is it, and why are there no groceries in my fridge, because I don't know when to shop and my whole routine's off, right? So I got my latte and my Smugglies, and I want you to grab something and cozy in. And if you're watching the replay, I'm aiming for this to be about 45 minutes of just space where you can, hello Giselle. So I'm here, I just said I'm in my Snugglies and I've got my latte, and this is just a guided reflection for, I don't know, if you are like me, my brain was really squirming out of New Year reflection. I really find it valuable. And if I look back on my journal in other years, I was like, oh, wow, that was really insightful, but this year, my brain kept swirling, and I've realized even as I launched my book this year, how much it is just a gift of grace for overthinkers or just we women just like to Happy New Year. We just kind of, our thoughts can go in circles sometimes, right? Until we write it down. And some of us need that external structure, just someone to say, oh, someone else cares that I'm doing this. I'm just going to sit down and do it with them. And I've done one of those this year already. And so I thought I would offer you one as well. So again, the link, the workbook is either in your inbox if you are on my email list or part of the Dare Club, as well as it's the top link in your feed here. And it kind of looks like this. And so you can open it up and scroll through. And I've called it my fresh start, creating my 2020 storyboard. And so if you know me, you love writing. You know what? I love writing a novels, and I'm writing a book called Dare to Decide that will be published this year. And I'm going to tell you more about that at the end. And just how you can learn more about that, what's coming down with that, and some of the fun things that I'm getting ready to prepare. I'm really excited about. So that will be at the end. And so what I'm going to start with here first is we never enter, we're going to do this in two sections, right? So there's always the reflecting back and the dreaming forward. And so in story words, which is kind of a thread that goes through my Dare to Decide book, we're going through our backstory first, right? So as much as we like the idea of a clean slate, and that's very freeing, the reality is we don't usually come into a new story with a clean slate. I know is that bad for me to say that? Because what we come with is the things that we've experienced, the names that have been spoken over us, the things we believe about ourselves, and all of that has affected our story in the past. The people in our lives have shaped us, and that matters. That affects the decisions we make, even the desires, some of the desires that we want. And that all of that affects the story we're living out. And we can just let it happen, or we can start being intentional with it and more aware about it. And when we're more aware, then we can make choices as to what to do with it. And we aren't just helpless in our stories, right? So there's this concept of a story that is out there that's pretty well known if you know anything about writing, and it's called the hero's journey. And it's this idea that this victor or this victim kind of goes through this whole journey and through these doorways or breakthroughs or crossroads that lead them into these stages of a story that wraps it up, to the final climax. There's this transformation in the character, depending on the kind of story that you're writing. There's this transformation, right? At the beginning, the person was maybe ignorant, and by the end, he's wiser. Or sometimes, maybe they are selfish, and by the end, they're generous. And so there's this transformation that wouldn't have happened if they hadn't pushed through all of these barriers in the circle. I'm saying this because some people do it in this, round circle, and it's about the world they're in. And so I'm taking you kind of through this journey, reflecting on these early days when I had novels spread all over my bed and I was storyboarding them. And we're going to kind of do the same thing with your year. So we're going to start with your backstory. And so there's about 6 points for, no, 7 actually, 6 points for each one. And so I'm just gonna give you a couple minutes to just do some reflection. I'm gonna stop here and be scribbling away myself, and so in the pauses, that's what we'll be doing. So in the setting, so the first one is setting, and these questions are designed so sometimes I'm a deep thinker, but I don't always get there right away. We need to ease into it. We need something that's familiar, easy questions, right? So the first one is your setting. So describe your environments. Jot down, where did you live this year? Where did you travel? Where did you hang out? Where did you work? Where were the areas that you spent time, that you were present in the last year? And just jot those down, list them. And it could be just one spot, the same old, but write them down anyway. Where did your story take place last year? So I'm going to give you just basically a minute to just jot that down. Bryn, hi. So there is a link in the comments there where you can download the workbook and just kind of go through. That's what we're going to working through. I didn't number the pages, but we're on the second page, question 1, talking about the setting. So I'm easing you into a reflection here. It's going to take about 45 minutes. So, turn off your phone or whatever you're listening to, whatever's going to interrupt you. And I'm happy you're hanging out with us. So as you write down your setting, where you spent time, where you hung out, what were some of the words, maybe write down, or just think through, what were some of the words that describe that? Was it cluttered? Was it peaceful? Was it full of turmoil? Was it exciting and supportive? What are some of the words that you describe where you were hanging out? And some of these I'll start giving you examples too. I'm going to move on from that one and just type in if you have questions. So tell me in there tell me in the comments what was one of the places you spent the most time, and what were some of the words you would describe that. Right, share that in the comments, and I'm going to move on. Dreams and desires. So the next thing you do if you were to write a story or your backstory is that we aren't just in this container. We have these dreams and desires, and there's plenty of people that say, well, just live the same life every day, or I don't know what my dreams are, but there's still something that we're seeking, right? Like if we're unhappy, it's because there's something else we want to feel or experience instead, even if we don't know how to articulate it or name it. So this section is dreams and desires. So if you look over the last year, I didn't give you very much space here because I don't want you to get totally caught up into this back reflection. It can be kind of that, black hole of looking back too. And I don't want that to be this. This is just a springboard to move forward. So tuning into what were some of the longings you had, what kind of prayers did you pray over and over? What kind of dreams or goals did you have at the beginning of the year? Or which ones did you feel you should have had? Maybe others thought you should have the goal, and it's just kind of always weighing on your mind, or something you started and never finished. We're going to go through another layer of this later. So just do some observation. What are some of those things that you were wanting? And what were you striving for? What did it seem like it was taking most of your time, or you're always moving, pressing towards that, or maybe you were always talking about something. What were you always aiming for, trying to convince others of? You know what, and maybe the contrast is thinking at the beginning of the year. One way to do this is going back to some, if you journal, some of your old journals, or maybe some of your old Facebook posts or Instagram posts, something that triggers those memories, if you can't think of many. But there's some prompters, right? So in your relationships, what were you wanting? In your health and wellness, what were you striving for? What were you trying to achieve? In your home or your family, immediate family, extended family, or your spouse or kids, in your work and your vocation, your career, or non-career, right? Personal growth and spiritual growth. Those are just some area prompters. So what were some of those dreams and desires? What are you aiming for, longing? All right. So did it give you enough time? So the things that you would drop down initially, they're things that, might be surface things. And so what you could say is, behind that, what was it you were really longing for, right? If you put down one word. So, for me, it's always like, I just want to feel better about myself and stronger, but exercise isn't always a priority. And, so if I'm, exercise more or, move more, I just want to feel stronger and have more energy and just feel good, that I feel like I can show up. And sometimes you just feel icky, right? So if I peel back layers, I can dig down to what was the real desire there? Because that's often what is motivating us, even if the external changes. Okay, so write down in the comments, what was one of those dreams or desires that you wanted? What was something that you just saw kind of pop up a lot in the last year? All right. So I'm going to move on to number 3 now. Characters. So in your backstory, of course, we aren't the only ones in our story. And Giselle, you mentioned family there. We aren't the only ones in our story. So who are the people that you spent time with? Because the people that we spend time with shape us. They affect us. They make a difference, positively and negatively, in our life. There's some that we have regrets. There's grief that comes with it. And so it's just nice to be able to look back, and sometimes we underestimate, right? We're feeling a certain way, so we remember certain things. And so for gratitude and also just for awareness is who did you spend the most time with? Because then you can look back and evaluate, do I want more or less of that later? So some prompters here. Also the different types of people. So who are people that mentored, inspired, encouraged you? It could be online, in groups, one-on-one, in person, in different environments. So just jot down a few names down there. And then who did you inspire, encourage, invest in, or give to? It could be organizations or charities. It could be people that you mentored, people you spent a lot of time texting or on the phone with, just supporting. People that you hung out most with at church. Was there a giving and receiving in those? Was it balanced? Or was it people that's who you gave to, that's who you just felt you're called to speak into and relate to? And then which relationships have changed? So think back a year ago. What relationships have kind of faded out of the picture? They aren't the same anymore. And that's okay. Or maybe there's some that you've missed or that you're grieving, some relationships that have changed or they're absent, or maybe they've passed away and it's changed and you're grieving them. And then who are some of the new connections you made? Who new came into your life? Or I had some friends that I reconnected with. It was really special. And I saw their transformation story. They weren't the same person that I knew 10 years ago when we hung out. And that was really neat. So you can jot those down. I'll give you 30 more seconds. One of those people in there. If God's a part of your life, then, sometimes I never know how to answer that, but in there, if it automatically is you're interacting with God, then in a sense, God is someone who's pouring into you. And when you evaluate, you can evaluate what kind of relationship is that with Him. Is it life-giving? Does it feel like a chore? Is it something you've missed? Because there's a connection that's lost. So God is another activity that you can kind of comment on there and see how, just evaluate. What was that relationship like this year? Okay. All right, so moving along. Now, of course, there's your character in your story. Who were you last year? And so one of the prompters we can do to just for quick thinking is just list down all the roles that you had in 2018, or your main roles. So, you're a mom, or you're a wife, or you're a friend, you're an employee, or were you a daughter? What were those main roles that kind of came to light in the last year? So just list them there. And then beside that, it could be you were a business owner, an athlete, a coach, dancer, a leader. So, and then kind of say at the beginning of the year, what were some of the words? Just use words that come to mind. What are some of the words that come to mind? Maybe other people described you, or kind of felt described how you were. Oh, I have a visitor. I'm just on the phone right now. Okay, Lexi. And then at the beginning of the year, and then contrast kind of lately, or in the last month or so. What words would you describe them? Looking at, is it the same words? Was there transformation in there? Did it go from better to worse? Worse to better? So one of those roles as an example for me would be, mom. And I would say a lot of the year I felt like I was a distracted, hurried mom, which didn't always nurture the best results in that environment, right? In my relationship with her. And so a lot of my striving, who I wanted to become as a mom, was just being present and being a listener and creating a safe place to engage her conversation with all the things that my daughter wanted to tell me. And of course, there's parenting challenges in there too, but that was one of my examples. Okay, number 5. We're on number 5. It's my backstory and what I experienced. And so, this is different than desires, but there's certainly desires might play. This is what it looked like on the outside. So it could be events. You're going to list what events did you tend to. Could be weddings, conferences, workshops, could be courses. It could be, just you went to church every week. It could be, groups that you led or attended. And then accomplishments. And those could be, like those are the visible things that you accomplished. So if you were in, a business owner or an entrepreneur, maybe you would say I have, this many people on my list, or I sold these many services, or I had this many clients a week, or those kinds of things. What are some of those? Did you get any rewards or certificates? Did you have a graduation? Did you, what did you achieve? What did you accomplish? And then could be defining moments. So what were some of those moments that you treasured? It could be, for me, it's just those times we got a bunny this year. That would be an event. And aside from the hassles that come with a bunny who we decided to keep in our living room, the moments that we treasure is it actually brings us together as a family on the living room floor. And, there's just moments of rolling around and trying to pet the bunny who doesn't want to be snuggled. And but it just brings us together as a family with some laughs and some cute moments. And so those are moments that we'll treasure. It could be lessons you learned. Did you learn any lessons? Things that God showed you, things that you just learned the hard way, or you just remember, I'm not going to do that way again, or man, I hope I never go through that again, or just, I got better because of this. And then the last prompt would be, what are some of the things that you tried and just didn't really work out? Maybe it was your fault, maybe it wasn't, maybe you knew what you're doing, maybe you know exactly what you're doing and nothing went as planned. It was a surprise or just didn't meet your expectations. What were some of those things? And then when you've written one, type in the comments to some of those that you had. A couple of them. Okay. Again, I'm not giving you that much time to go through it. Write in my comments, is that working? Where are you at with that? Let me know one of those categories. What's something that you experienced this year? And then, as you write your list, you can put a plus or a minus. Was it a negative experience for you or a positive one? And you could even do, then and now, because experiences shape us, right? And how we react to something when it first happens might not be how we see it later. Giselle says, having your granddaughter holding me before you left Edmonton. Oh, I'm glad she gets to see so much of you, though. That's a really treasure. Yeah, was it a positive or a negative one? Because then when you write this whole list, and this is just prompters, you might kind of keep this list going. It's hard to think of all of these things all at once. But throughout, the next few days, just keep your list out and add to it as you remember. Maybe you scroll back on Facebook or look through your journals or your calendar and say, oh yeah, that happened and that happened. And just do a plus or minus. Were they positive experiences or negative at that time? And then now, if you were to look back on them, would you say that different? Because there's a lot of negative experiences that sucked at the time, but now I've worked towards being grateful for them. And that is a journey in itself, and that is part of a transformation, and it doesn't happen all at once. And it doesn't always happen, and that's okay too. And so then you can journal. What was their impact and meaning? So if you're not a self-aware person, then that is a good exercise to go through, is just put articulate, again, the impact and meaning. What was the impact on other people? It helps you kind of get out of your own self, but see the broader, could be the impact it had on you, or it could be the impact you had on someone else in that. What was that? Because this is the part where, yeah, sure, this is our story, but we're also part of God's story. And God's story very much involves other people in it. And it doesn't have to be all cut and dried. Relationships are fluid and messy and interactive, and they don't always go the way they want or expect. And sometimes they're fulfilling, and sometimes there's just something amiss or just dead wrong. And so, knowing the impact. This year I was in court and listening to someone close to me read an impact statement. And actually, that's something that you could do here. How did events impact you, positively or negatively? How did it change the course of your life? And that's going to help you even know what to move forward with, or what you're taking with you into your next door, how it's influencing the choices and decisions you make. So I'm going to let you do that on your own, and I'm going to move forward. So maybe you can go back and do that later. Maybe when you have some prayer time, quiet time. Okay, oh yeah. So number 6, conflict, gremlins, and villains. So there's a chapter in my book called Gremlins and Villains. And that's because, of course, things in life don't go smoothly, right? They're not really supposed to. Ideally, in the Garden of Eden, maybe they did at the beginning, but that's just not the way life is. And in stories, it's kind of boring if things go smoothly, right? But of course, we don't want that for our own lives. But the thing is that we actually don't grow as a person. We don't grow toward, increase our capacity as a person if there isn't some kind of tension, conflict, something butting up against us, something that we have to work through or struggle through. And so why not just name the conflicts, the gremlins, those mischievous little characters that keep, messing up our plans, those villains that just seem downright opposed against us, and start naming them. So what were some of the things? And so those can be internal. So what you're going to do is just list some of the internal. What were some of the things that you believed or expected, or the attitude you had that was getting in the way of what some of your dreams were, what you wanted to do, or who you wanted to be? So internally, for me, it was just, there's just not enough time. Never enough time, which would stress me out, and then I get overwhelmed and my mind just starts spinning, and I had to just keep letting things go and surrender everything that I chose not to get done. For me, it was so that I could name my 3 priorities, and that was my role in my day job, my role in my family and being present, that goal, that desire to be present and not distracted for my daughter and my husband, and that's a work in progress. And then it was for my book. And my book I knew was my number one thing, and I had to let go of a lot of things on the side in order to make that one thing happen. And so the sooner I was at peace with it, instead of like just struggling like, there's not enough time, the better I was who I wanted to be. So what are some of those internal ones? And then external. So what were the things that interfered? Could be as simple as technology. My website is one of the banes of my existence, and it prevents me from doing a few things because I refuse to spend more time on it the last year because I knew it would trump other things. But it could be other people are in your way. They aren't offering the support that you need from them or in the way that you need from them. People that just downward, like they butt heads. Or it could just be, misunderstandings. Or just people who have different goals than you do, and it adds tension. It could be health concerns. Health setbacks are a big thing. And sometimes our choices lead to that. Sometimes our inner, desires or habits lead to health issues, but sometimes they don't. They just happen. It could be other family members. Someone else gets sick, and it's kind of waylaid all your plans, and nothing turned out. So what was some of those conflicts that got in the way? Just name that. Okay. You wrote down a few things. So now, as you look back, going to number 7. Just kind of reflect on, right? So now it's today, and you're looking back on your story, and you're about to step into a new one. It's a new year. It's a new decade, 2020. It's a new day, and you get a fresh start. And of course, who says you could be going back and doing this mid-January because that's when you're in the frame of mind to, right? It's just today's just a good day and a comfy day to do this. But whenever you decide, today I'm going to enter a new story. We look back to where we've been. What are we taking with us? And what don't we want to carry with us? And so if you look back, what do you want less of in the coming year? And what do you want more of? Just write down a list. Just scribble. Don't be articulate. Just start scribbling things. Do you want more peace, more clarity, more joy, no more time with certain people, different kind of time spent with certain people? Do you want a deeper sense of purpose? Do you want to use your gifts more? Or commit less? Do you want to rest more? Do you want to, yeah. So in the comments, write down maybe what is one thing, either from number 6 or 7. What was something that kept interfering last year with where you wanted to be, who you wanted to be, what you wanted to have, what you wanted to do? Write it in the comments. Okay. So now, the next one, sorry I didn't put page numbers on this, but now we're going into my new story. You see that? You can't really because my light's shining on it. It's not even backwards. Okay. So I've got my new story. Oh, I'm not seeing actually all the comments here. Oh, look at that. Jeffrey, I didn't know you joined. Welcome. Okay, so if you're still hanging out here at the top of the comments, I have a worksheet that I'm doing a reflection guide with. So that's what I'm using here. See, I made it all pretty. It's not spring yet, but you know, I made it pretty. Busyness. So yes, busyness. It's like attention in itself, right? And that's kind of nice about a day like this when everything's closed, everything's kind of cozy, and you can just slow down and reflect. That's why it's a natural day for me. Okay, so your news story, new 2020. So hopefully this primed your pump a little bit to dream. Because I meet lots of people who just don't know how to dream very well, and they're very task oriented. And so this process actually is meant to engage your heart and your head and your gut, your intuition, because God speaks through all of us in those areas. And so that is that's important. So when you think of New Year's resolutions, they can be very, goal oriented, and I'm gonna do this, right? And if you're a type A person, you have your whole list, and maybe you would, kind of have a life plan, or a wheel where you're just making 2 to 5 goals per area of your life. I've been there. And by the end, you're like, oh my gosh, there's no, okay, on fire. I'm going to do all these in my January 20th to April. You're like, what was I thinking? And you're tired, and those are made from your head in a sense, and your heart would be more your beings and your values. How do you want to show up? What do you want to experience? What do you want to be connected to? What is going to fill those needs? And sometimes our doing desires, what we're pursuing, what we're accomplishing, they're driven from a need to fulfill what our heart wants to experience. And so if you are a Christ follower, if faith is a core part of you, if you have a relationship with Jesus, then what we believe is that Jesus fills that need first, and then he adds all of those things to us. And when we're striving and doing it, right? So I heard in one of the reflections I did yesterday, it was just a good reminder, because Ephesians 2:10 says that God prepares good works for us in advance to do. And in Hebrews, he says that he is the author of our faith. And James talks about faith and action are together, right? And so, when we're writing a story, there's different ways people write a story. If you ever tried or heard authors, there's the plotters and planners, right? So this was kind of me. I had sheets. I had character sketches for every single character, 2 pages filled out on their backstory and what they're like and their personality. And, then the research. I had binders of research of, what it was like to raise a horse, because I had never owned one before. And all of these, research, and hours spent research on their setting and in, the environment that they're in, or the setting and history, that kind of thing. And the timeline plotted out. I had a whole series plotted out. But then there's the type of writers who show up into their page with one idea. Maybe it's the setting. Maybe it's one character. Maybe it's a conflict. And that's what they start with, and that's what spurs their story, and everything kind of feeds there. No matter which way you go through, you end up with a messy first draft. The book that's published on the shelf is not anywhere near what that first messy draft is. And I know, because I just handed off, my 5th draft to a professional editor, and it's changed and morphed around. And that's kind of you're sitting here, your new story. So I'm going to release you. If you're a perfectionist, if everything's neat and tidy, I know Sometimes I won't write down goals because if I dream, or I won't write down dreams. I don't want to dream with my husband because if I say it, then I'm going to commit to it and do it because I've got this over sense of responsibility. But that's not what this is. So I want to give you the freedom when you jot things down, just because you're jotting it down, you're just getting it out of your head so it's not spinning around. And you get to look back later to say, is that something I want to pursue this year? Or actually, does it just fall down into the, a lower priority? So actually, yeah, it's a desire. And if it shows up in my life, great. If God wants to nurture and bring it up, great. But that's not something I'm going to work with. That's not something to say I'm going to partner with or give my time and focus to. So if that is your nature, that's your freedom as you fill out this dream part. All right, you get style. So let go of your shoulds. You can write them on the paper. This is a way to kind of get them out of your head and figure out what's underneath that. So your setting. Think about where this year in 2020 do you want to live, travel, work, hang out? And as you write those down, just kind of jot down what do you want them to feel like? What would they look like? Is it chaotic and you want it to look organized or supportive? How would it sound to you? So write some of those things. What are some of those words that would describe the setting that you want to be in? All right, so how'd you do? So write down, I want to see in the comments. Keep engaged here. Tell me one of the places, what did you want your setting to look like in 2020? What are some of those words and how would you describe what you want it to look like? Okay, while I wait for you to do that, we're going to move on to number 2, dreams and desires. All right, so chances are a lot of the dreams and desires, they might be the same as the last year. So that's where you might be writing some of those same ones down. They're just sometimes those desires are the ones that just move us forward. In a story, there is a overarching mission, an external mission, like something that you're after. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, right? Frodo's mission was to bring the ring ultimately to Mordor, send it back, redeem, but his desire. So then there's there's a second tier, there's a deeper why, right? He wanted to restore, he didn't want the world to end. He wanted safety and serenity back into the Shire. In God's story, right? Conflict happened and the world was never the same. And so his whole story is about weaving history to redeem it, what was falling apart, and ultimately restore it back to Eden again, right? It's very, light summary there. But there's an ultimate desire because he wanted restoration back, relationship back with us, not just to do better, be better beings. He wants relationship the way that he knows that it could be. He wants this whole world functioning together. And so in your dreams, some of those will be the same and some of them might be different. You might realize, some of these desires were fulfilled and I didn't even realize it, or you did realize it and there was a significant change. So in some of those prompters, what are kind of those dreams and desires you have for your relationships and health and wellness, home, family, work, your vocation, your career, your finances, personal growth, and your spiritual life. And you can come up with your own categories as well. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes there to write that down. All right, and when you're finished, and you don't have to fill in dreams for all of the areas. Some people do. You can just pick a couple. I find it overwhelming to think about all of them all at once, so I usually pick a few. All right. So in the comments, share what is one dream or desire that you have for 2020? One of mine is actually one of mine is with my book is just a really good launch party, and not so much about my book, but one that just sparks hope that I got years ago, that God gave me, that I could do this, even if I don't feel qualified or have the capacity, even if I'm not nearly the person that I need to be. So that's kind of I'm dreaming about what my launch party looks like, and even planning that for now. So that's one of my dreams. No more anxiety. Yes, that's a great one. Yeah, health and wellness. So what if you turn that around, Giselle, what would be the positive be? If it was less anxiety, what would replace that? What would it feel like to not have anxiety? Okay. Number 3, characters. So again, you can refer to the list you just wrote. Who do you want to spend the most time with? Right? So these are the characters in your story, the people that you're going to be in life. And of course, this changes and ebbs and flows throughout the whole year, right? You can't always know what's going to happen, but you can set out knowing this is why it helps doing the positive and negative evaluations, because sometimes we're just so used to the people in our life, and it doesn't mean everybody that you put in negative sign beside are the people like I'm going to write them out of my life and cut them out. And well, okay, there might be times where you can do that and you spend less time with them. Sometimes that doesn't work, right? But the awareness of this is negative, and I would guess that some people's sheets, there'd be lots of negatives. And so that could either be because that's the filter you're seeing it. It could be your reactions. So I realize sometimes the negative environments I have on my phone, I'm instigating with my own mood or attitude or distraction. And they're responding to that, and it just becomes this cycle, right? So the awareness is you're writing down the people, but then if there's negative, positive, then in there you're writing down, and this is where it'll flow into your character. Who do you want to be? What do you want them to feel around you? What do you want to feel around them? And when you're aware of what you want and how important that is, And where it falls in your priority is you list the people that you want to spend time with. Then that's where you start creating action plans to, I'm almost done. That's where you spend plans to say, okay, this is the one that's most important. And this is the one that will, when you think about the characters in your life and who you're spending time with, and does it affect you positive or negatively, and when do you impact them positively or negatively? You create your rhythms around that to say, okay, there's been times in my life where I'm like, okay, this is not good, but I don't know any other way to be. I don't know how to do this. I can't change this situation. And so I'm literally at a standstill, but this is when I can say, this is what I want. And then again, you start putting what it means for you to do that. Then you know how to ask for help. So chances are when we think about, in terms of goals or resolutions, we think about something that I've got to do this on my own by sheer willpower, and it won't work. Goals won't work by sheer willpower alone. You don't get through your story just by willpower. That's why there's the characters in our lives. They're coming in, when we talk about the hero's journey that I mentioned kind of at the beginning of the video, there's actually specific types of characters that come in and out of the story that the character responds to. There's the sidekicks that come alongside, and there are the, in my book I name these different types of people, but in terms of story, there's always a mentor, someone who is a guide or a mentor that kind of shows you the way. And so when you start realizing, what are the type of people in my life, this is what I want, and I don't know how to get there other than trying and trying and trying harder. What if there's a different way to move forward than just trying harder? So one of those is realizing that the pressure isn't all on you. If you believe in Jesus, right? If Jesus is part of you, then those of, for us, it's faith driven, then there's a spiritual aspect at work in us. There's something, where it's not all on us to do that in how we're changing. And we need to accept that grace and let that work. There's the other verse in the Bible that says that, God is the one completing the work in us. It's not all on us. And so the things and the desires that we have are going to build on that work, the work that he's already doing on us. So sometimes the people in our lives, so I'm kind of combining the other characters and my character in number 3 and 4 on the worksheet, because the roles that we have and who we want to become, when we start seeing how we interact with those people and who we spend time with, then we can choose, okay, when I spend this much around time with people who build me up and lift me up and move me to a better version of myself, and then these are the people that I need to invest in and give. And so how do I be around people that fill me up and help me become who I'm becoming? How do I learn skills to handle confrontation or difficult conversations, or negotiations, or leadership skills? How do I become better to do that? Who are the people that can help me that? And then who do I invest in so that, it's this, it's a flowing river, right? We're not a swamp, and we don't just accept, and it gets stagnant. What we receive, we give out, and what we receive from God flows out. And so that's what's happening in these characters in your life. So just think about the different kinds of people that you're going to spend time with, and what do you need? Who do you need around you? And who do you need to be giving to? Who helps you feel alive? And then what have you been through and experienced that it's time that you pass on what you've received to them? You comfort with comfort you've received. You give wisdom where you've received wisdom. Maybe you're 2 steps ahead of them and you're leading them along. That's when we feel alive and purposeful. And we can choose intentionality and just being aware of it and naming it on your sheet actually helps you look for those relationships. Doesn't mean you have to plot it out now. You can just say, these are the people I need in my life this year. You might not even know their names yet, but it becomes a prayer. It becomes, in a sense, it's your Raz felt, your particular, I don't know how to say it, but your brain starts knowing what you're looking for, and you start recognizing it. Same way you recognize, oh, God's answering my prayer. I just met this person, or it's just that you know what qualities you're looking for in someone, and when you see it, you're like, oh, this is what I just prayed for. I want to get to know them better. Maybe this is the answer that I've been looking for. Maybe they can help me. So that was my ramblings about people, that I see a lot of people missing opportunities of, or falling in victim mode to the same old, because they don't feel like they have enough support in their life, or they're surrounded by negative, people, and they don't have the positive to counter it. So that's that. So let me know if on all my rambling you were distracted, or if you, Catherine, welcome. Welcome. Okay, so Catherine, you can't hear, but you can see. Okay, well, hopefully I'm nice and snuggly to look at. I don't know if that's going to inspire you, but that's great. Oh, okay, Catherine, yeah, hopefully you can go back and look at this later on. And this is going to be up for quite a while, so you can keep revisiting it when you have quiet time. So we are on My New Story, question 3 and 4. And so once you talk about your characters, the people that you want in your life, then you're looking at the roles. So again, you're listing the roles in your life and who do you want to become in them. And this is where the end of this year, what we want is to see the transformation, right? So back in backstory on number 4, you're saying, who are you now? How is it describing you? And you're writing what is the transformation you want to do from now to a year from now? What kind of person would you love to hear God say, I'm proud because I see this in you, in this area, this role of your life? What would you be delighted? It's like, oh, this is who I want to be for my daughter or my grandkids or my group members or my coworkers. This is how I want them to experience me. And if I can say this at the end of the year, this is what I'm going to do. All right. So who am I becoming? I just jot some of those down. It's all right. This is taking longer than I planned for. I didn't test it all out ahead of time. That's classic Emily right there. And now, so, okay. So in the comments, just because that, shows me you're tracking with me and I'm not moving too fast or too slow. Write down what's one word that describes how you want people to experience you in the coming year. How do you want to, what kind of person do you want to be? And maybe that'll end up being your word of the year that just kind of summarizes everything. Maybe not. All right. So we are on to my new story. What I want to experience, number 5. So what I want to experience. So this is where it would look more like goals. So you're going to list what are the events that you're going to anticipate in 2020. Maybe things that you'd want to reserve. Maybe they're already on your calendar. You're blocking time off. They're things that are going to rise as priorities, which means that some of the rest of your life will flow around that. It will impact other areas of your life. And what are those things now? For me, I know my brother just announced that he's planning a wedding at the end of August. And so that impacts a few things in my life. So I want to put that on my calendar and kind of make sure I'm planning around that. And then what do you want to accomplish in your rewards, right? So, my big, and again, this is I'm telling you because I have to give myself permission. Just because I write it down here, I can evaluate my goals later. I'm great at unrealistic goals and not knowing how long they'll take me, which is why I resonate with an intention approach to direction, going in a direction, because the more you go in a direction, you'll end up at that destination, as opposed to just all the plans that get there. That can get waylaid by life. But for me, my book is going to be released this year, and I would love to know that this year 1,000 people have read it. Not that I sold 1,000 copies, or that, I have 1,000 likes or all of that, but I want to know 1,000 people tried it out. How do I get there? That's where goal setting in, and that's not this workshop, right? There's, whole working backwards and setting mile markers for that, and that will come later in, accountability and support, and I'll need to find mentors to help me get there, and encouragers for when I hit a wall and say, this is impossible, right? All of those things. But, that's kind of my fun, crazy, scary goal. 1,000 people to read my books. There you go. Kind of feels vulnerable just saying it out loud. Now somebody's going to hold me to it or help me out. That'd be great. So, okay, what other projects are you working on? It's going to take your time, your focus. It's going to impact other areas of your life. Maybe you're doing renos. That's going to affect other areas, other commitments. What are those things that you kind of want to work on? What are some rhythms and habits? What are just things, this rhythm or this habit in my life, I just want to start doing it. I want to start getting up at 5:30 in the morning because I just love having my morning routine and my space to myself, and I love doing it consistently. That's the routine I want to work on, something like that. And then again, experiencing is things that you're growing and learning, and what you read and listen to starts shaping the way you think, and you don't even realize it at the time. So what podcasts or sermons, what books do you read? What do you watch? What conferences or retreats or things that you attend? Even when you watch on TV, it can be positive or negative. What helps you? For me, I realized intense shows don't work very well. I like humorous, nonsensical ones sometimes. They help my brain stop. So take one moment to just go through and just jot down some of those things. And again, you can come back to this over the next couple of days and keep adding things in. Okay, so my backstory number 6. Conflict, gremlins, and villains. Again, these are probably going to be some of the same characters, same obstacles that showed up last year. The good thing is that you are familiar with them. And instead of just like wishing them away or being frustrated that they exist, just name them, call them out, show them, okay, these guys are going to show up in my life. And what, so internally, the internal expectations, attitude, outlook, lies, belief. When you name that, what is a lie or belief that you don't want to carry with you? That's not serving you well. That's this negative thought that reinforces your negative attitude or actions. What's a truth that you need to believe in instead? And in my coaching, I have a whole experience that I can walk you through to do this. If you want to book one of my coaching experiences, and just kind of reshape that, where it comes from the heart. It's not just a head thing, but what truth would replace that? What do you need to believe? And maybe you don't believe it yet. You just know you should. That's okay to know that, because just knowing you should doesn't make it happen, right? It's usually where our goal frustrations lie, or motivation frustrations. And so, just knowing, okay, this is what I should believe. So what's a step in between? What's a mile marker there? What rhythm or habit might you need to adopt, or to start reinforcing that new truth? And don't pick a bunch, just pick one you're going to start out with. And when you realize that one's ingrained in your life, you're like, okay, I'm going to look at my list and find the next one. So yeah, what's one that you want to go work with? And then external challenge. What external challenges? So obstacles, people, technology, could be laws, could be health issues, distractions. What are some of the other roadblocks you just know are going to pop up in your life? And so number 7 is the transformation. So as you list some of those things, pick the one that stands out. So as you're writing all of those things down, look at your conflicts another way. How are each of those conflicts actually opportunities to help you transform from who you've been the last year to who you want to be at the end of next year, right? Maybe they're the resistance that's actually going to give you the exercise, the tension to go stronger in that area, to realize you can't, trying hard isn't going to get you anywhere. You can't do it on your own. So it needs to be done through you, or you need to be able to surrender something to make it happen, or maybe you need to change your approach or find a different style of support. Where do you think you should be doing something? And just because you should doesn't mean you're motivated to do it, so you aren't going to do it. You can reframe it, dig deeper, think creatively. What is a new way of looking at this? How do I get around this? And then sometimes, of course, we just got to suck it up and just do it, right? But be honest with yourself to figure out which of those do you need to lean into. Sometimes you need to get creative. So when I was writing my book this past year, and I just kept getting resistance after resistance, right? I didn't feel inspired, but I needed to get the book out. And so I wrote down all of my obstacles, all of the things that I was scared of, or the excuses, or I didn't know how to do this next step. I just wrote them all down. All of a sudden I had an action plan to tackle. It's like, okay, these are the things. Each of these showed up with the belief that these are solvable, they're conquerable in some way, form, or other. Someone else has figured it out. That means I can too. And I adopted this belief. And all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, so how am I going to tackle this one? And objectified it a bit. And that's how you can handle your transformation. Doesn't mean it feels easy at that time. It feels personally. Feelings affect you, absolutely. But when you approach it with, okay, this can be conquered, and even if I don't, I can move through this resistance anyway. I can make it work for me. And if anything else, it's going to give me empathy for someone else, and I'm going to be able to relate to them. And it's going to keep me connected to, that higher power. I can't do it on my own. I need God's resources and strength and might and his healing. And that's another thing. Where are the areas where you, in transformation, before you can move ahead, it's not about making goals, setting mile markers, plowing ahead. What are the areas you need to forgive someone to make room for more love, or to flourish more? And what are some of the areas you need healing in before you have enough wholeness to be able to have the capacity for what God wants to give you more of this year? That might be your first step. Where do you need some wholeness or healing? So God can give you. So you can fortify your capacity for what God wants to give you next. And I've talked to a bunch of people in there that it wasn't that they weren't scared to reach, they weren't, scared to reach their goals. They just wanted, they just needed healing before they could have space for the more things that God wanted to give them. So anyway, that is the end. Thank you so much for sticking through all of this and spending the time in it. Hey, Sandy. And so I'm going to wrap this up. Again, you can walk through it on your own. Looks like it's going to take you about just over an hour. And so that's time when you decide, okay, this is the time I want to do this, and this, I need the thought prompters and journal, and I'm actually going to show up and be prepared for this. Totally get that. I've stopped and started that a few times this year. But I hope that you do take the time, and it doesn't have to be New Year's Day. It's whenever you decide, you know what, I need a reset in life. You can do this whole exercise. So that's it. So my announcement. So I want to do just a prayer for you, if you don't mind. If for whoever has gone through this, if you've gone through this whole exercise, and I want to pray this prayer. And so I just pray, Jesus, thank you for a new story. I thank you that you've been present through our new one, and I thank you that you have invited us into your story, and that is precious. I don't take that privilege lightly for myself or for these friends who have that same desire. And for those who just don't know, or they've had a negative experience with you or with church in that realm, I pray that you would introduce your story to them in a way that is meaningful, that reaches them. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so my announcement. So this year is the year that my book, Dared to Decide, Finding Peace, Clarity, and Courage at Life's Crossroads, is going to come out. And so right now it's in the hands of an editor. It's going to take a couple months to go through that process. And so we're looking at probably late April, after Easter, early May is probably when the book is going to be launched, which means that the beginning of this year is just going to be me ramping up and sharing kind of all the juicy tidbits that are in the book. So this isn't really this is an announcement because this is me and my dream and my exciting message coming out. But really, this is just a transference to help you become, how do you let go of the things that have been holding you back? Maybe you are a big dreamer and you just want to make those leaps forward. Maybe that's not it, and you just want more peace, less anxiety, less stress, so you can wholeheartedly show up in the things that you are already being called to do, whatever it is. Whether you're a overthinker, perfectionist, people pleaser, and those are the things I want to invite you into my the Dare Club experience. So it's going to be launching in Facebook next week, and it's just going to be weekly prompts, lessons. You'll have access to my launch party news, book release news, resources, workshops that we'll be doing, and things that are just going to equip you to dream if you're not a dreamer. Take the next steps that you need to do. Let go of what you need to, what's getting in the way. A lot of things that you wrote down in here. It's going to be tips and tools to just help you do that. Inspiration and quotes. And so I will be sending an email out. I'll be posting messages in this feed here on my Facebook page, inviting you into it next week. It's not ready yet. I still got to, finish enjoying the holiday today and not work so hard and be present, right? All of those other goals. So I promise I'm not going to work my butt off doing it, which is what I love doing, to just show up and help people. But I'm going to balance too. So I'm so excited for these things for you. Some of those things that you've been complaining about for years that you've wanted to do or you wish you could change, it's because you want to be a better version of yourself, to make the impact that you just on your heart for the people in your life. And that's what the Dare Club experience is all about. So I'll be sending you more news about that, and keep tuned so you can be part of the launch party and the book release, because that's really exciting. And it's all actually going to be geared towards building a momentum to helping prop up your own dreams and revealing some of those excuses that you've said, oh, I could never do that, or that's for them and not me. That's what this is all going to be about. So I'm really excited for you. This is going to be a great year, a whole new decade, and I'm really excited. So let me know in the comments as you go through this or come back and do this, what was your biggest takeaway? What was most helpful about walking through this experience with you? I would love to know. And others would. We'll love hearing how other people share things as well. So type it for everybody else who's going through this as well. And that really helps other people be inspired to realize, oh, I'm not the only one. Or, oh, they saw it this way. I didn't think of that. And it prompts your own thoughts, right? So, all right. Enjoy your New Year's Day, and I will see you around.